Good evening, everyone. My name is Tanika Nicholas, and on behalf of the Justice Reform Partnership, I would like to welcome you to tonight's Talk Justice Tuesday. Um, you know, Yesterday kicked off our legislative session, and tonight we're going to kick off our 2026 Talk Justice Tuesday legislative series. And I would just like to welcome all of you to our space tonight. If you are new to our space or a returning attendee, thank you for to continue to support us in the Justice Reform Partnership. I always like to share a little bit about our coalition. We started off with just 5 organizations, and with the addition with our Southeast chapter, we have now blossomed to 100 organizations and individuals throughout the state of Georgia. Our coalition, we bring together grassroots organizations, policy experts, directly impacted individuals, community organizers, all working together to bring a more just, equitable space and criminal legal reform in the state of Georgia. Our Talk Justice Tuesday series, we focus on complex issues at the Gold Dome at the state capitol, and we work to bring together our directly impacted communities. We work together to strategize to bring change within the state of Georgia. One of the things that's special about our Talk Justice Tuesdays this year, we're going to focus on legislative changes at the state capitol within 4 distinct series. Tonight is our Legislative Advocacy 101, and we're going to talk about how Georgia and what happens at the General Assembly within Georgia. And tonight, I'm not going to get too much into our topic tonight. I'm going to let our experts do that tonight. But February 24th, we're going to have a special live session at our Justice Day at the Capitol. A lot of organizations have lobby days, but a great thing about our partnership, we have an advocacy day that brings together a lot of our partners, and we have a day that's going to be great and impactful. I'm going to share in the chat because we do have registration actually open today that we would like for you to join us on February 24th at Central Presbyterian Church. And I'm going to share that. And actually, it should be on our website tomorrow. But if you give me a moment, I'm going to give registration on Eventbrite. But we're going to have a live session on February 24th, and we're going to focus on the Georgia parole system and how to reform parole. So join us on February 24th for a live Talk Justice Tuesday. If you stay with us in March, Crossover Day. If you don't know what that term is, stay tuned. We're going to talk about Crossover Day, but that's going to be March 13th. What is that, the 10th? We're going to talk about post-crossover review. So that's going to be our next crossover review day for Talk Justice Tuesday in March. And in April, that's going to be our final legislative Talk Justice Tuesday. And what we're going to talk about then, session will be over, but we're going to talk about what happened during the session and what's going to happen going forward in 2027. So we're going to have registration things on our website, and you can register for those next 3 events coming forward. But tonight, we're going to talk about 101 advocacy. So what happens under the Gold Dome? What the key players are? What happens? I learned a lot within my 3 years working at Southern Center. I was green. I didn't know a lot about legislative advocacy 101. But if you're new or if you're an expert, stay tuned. You'll learn a lot about what's happening at the Georgia State Capitol. Tonight, I'm going to turn the next slide over to Bridget Simpson. Bree is the Executive Director of Bar Business, and Bree's going to get us started about what's happening if you don't have a seat at the table. Bree?
Thank you, Nikki. Well, welcome everyone. Nikki did such a wonderful job doing that. But I'm here specifically to talk about why it's really important for you to participate in the legislative advocacy arena, why it's really important for you to be civically engaged. All of those things impact you so deeply and so greatly in your life. Me, I'm a justice impacted woman, and that means that I have served time in prison, and that means that my background is checkered, to put it in that way. But that impacts me in so many areas. One of the areas that impacted me in was in voting. But I discovered before I was even able to vote that I could advocate for myself and others. And I was able to do this underneath the gold dome. I was able to be a part of an organization that was advocating for formerly incarcerated, justice impacted people like myself. And that is how I began to learn about the process. I too was green. When I began this process, but I think I'm knowledgeable. I like to say I'm knowledgeable, but I had to get here. So, why does voting matter? It matters because it shapes your entire community. It does not just shape the ballot box. People are underneath the false pretense that when you vote, it doesn't do anything. Well, it actually does, right? It impacts your schools, it impacts the way that the quality of education that your children get, it impacts your home, it impacts your trash cans, how many trash cans you have. It impacts if you have potholes and your car is messed up. It impacts everything. It impacts the way your environment is shaped. It impacts where you get to live. It impacts the rights you have as Black and Brown people, the rights you have as marginalized folks. It impacts that all. So it does totally matter. Every vote impacts the way that we have what hospitals we get to have in our areas, the quality of healthcare that we have. We know all that's in the news, just about folks not being able to have health insurance, and just the Obamacare being, subsidies being shut off, and that directly was impacted through voting. So, and I really want people to understand that, yes, I'm talking about the presidential election, but that is only one part of voting and advocating, and that's federally. But the things that impact us the most are actually our local laws. Those are the ones that impact that trash can. Those are the ones that impact what area your child is able to be a part of and go to school. For me as a justice impacted individual, the fact that I can't go to certain places, not in Atlanta. We have a little bit more flexibility in Atlanta, but I can't just go to certain places and apply because I won't be accepted there. And that means that is impacting my quality of education that my child can have. That means that it's impacting how much pollution I have to take in. It's impacting all of that, right? School boards, getting your children into good schools, the school board, you have to vote for that. So it's so many small things that you don't think directly impact you through being able to vote, but it does. And if you can't vote, I say advocate. I remember again going under the gold dome and I did not have the right to vote, but being a part of legislative pushes that supported people like me, and eventually I was able to do a lot of things that I never thought that I would be able to do because I was able to advocate. So, if you can switch to the next slide, I think that's really important to say. I know during the time where the SNAP benefits were decreased, as we see, the mayor was able to impact the way the rent was it high, low, was it stopped? We see how high the rent is, and it directly isn't is tied to who we vote for and what they see as important and what we make them see as important. If you don't get anything else from me tonight, I just want to remind you all that the people that we elect, they work for us. It's not the other way around. We don't work for them, they actually work for us. But I want to talk a little bit about legislative power and the personal impact that it has. Again, those state laws, those federal laws, they impact healthcare. They impact whether you have voting rights or not. Today, it might be justice impacted people that they disenfranchise from our votes. But tomorrow, it might be people who are tall. Tomorrow it might be people who have red hair. We don't know. It's up to their pleasure. and it is up to us to make sure that their pleasure reflects the people. So when I put Senate Bill 63 up here, it was it was in a bill passed in 2024, and it directly impacted the way folks were able to bail their loved ones out of jail. And according to the legislation, you if you are a nonprofit and you support your community through expression, you are, in their eyes, they don't want you to do it anymore. So um they put barriers on you. So now you can only bail your loved one out twice for the year to be not considered trying to do a bail bondsman's job. Right. So that was very challenging. There are some of our loved ones, some of our siblings who are experiencing drug addictions, and it might take 5 times, it might take 6 times. But you were not allowed to do it. Different organizations advocated, and eventually we were able to get that law stayed for right now. Currently, we're in the Supreme Court. But those are examples of advocating and advocation making a change and it making a difference, and it impacts us all, right? It impacts job loss, whether you're able to get jobs, right? Like children right now, kids, young people right now who are coming out of colleges, who are coming out of high school, they don't have summer jobs. Folks coming out of college, they don't have jobs because of the impact of voting. So, minimum wage, healthcare, voting rights. I'll say that 100 times. And this really means that if you are not at this table, that means you're on the menu. And we don't want to be on the menu, y'all. We want to know exactly what it is. Is it a perfect system? No, it is not a perfect system, but we need to be a part of it so that we can help shape it, because the alternative is to just continue to be oppressed, and we're not going for that. So I will pass it on to the next person. That is okay. So I think for this slide right here, this is a pretty easy slide. So whoever's up next can queue up. I would say that it's really important for you to know who your officials are, what geographic location you live in. You have different representation based on that. And the reason why I tell you about local government is because you could see them at the Kroger, you could see them at the Publix, because guess what? They're local folks just like you. And it's more likely that if you have a pothole, you'll run into somebody at the supermarket. Amen. So, but you want to find out who your representatives are, because you are something that is a unit. You're a magical person, right? Because you're a constituent. A constituent can impact the way that these lawmakers create laws, how they govern us, and they work for you. So for me, I make sure that the people that I help to put in office, they're working for me. I don't care if they get sick of me. I don't care if they are in those shiny offices. You have to hold them accountable. So make sure that you're voting in your next election, and make sure that you're holding folks accountable. So scan this tool and find out who your legislators are. Go on the City of Atlanta's website, go on Clayton County's website, go on all of the websites and find who represent you. And remember, they work for you. They are getting paid because we pay taxes and because we put them there.
Amen. Thank you, Bree. I think I am the next speaker. I'm Ann Colleton. I work at the Georgia Justice Project, and it's always an honor to share space with Bridget and her team members at Bard Business and everyone else who's a member of the Justice Reform Partnership. So I'm going to talk a little bit she set the stage beautifully for why policy change matters and why we all need to get involved. Most of what we're going to talk about tonight relates to the Georgia legislature. So all the things that Bree mentioned about the local people, like judges and district attorneys, like they determine so many things in the criminal legal system. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but a lot of it's going to be focused on the Georgia legislature. They are the group of people that determine the bail bill that Bree mentioned. They determine if there are mandatory minimum sentences and other things related to the criminal legal system. So in this picture here, you'll see the river, right? There's people floating down the river about to drown. People are throwing them life rafts, pulling them out of the water, right? And so everybody, we all play different roles in our world, helping people who need help. So some people are do direct service work, meet immediate needs. So that is 100% necessary, of course, right? So if somebody's floating down this river, we need people to pull them out. We need people to say, come on out, get on shore. We're going to give you some food, some shelter, some clothing, do it to survive, right? But eventually, if we're pulling people out of the river one at a time only, we're going to get tired. We're probably not going to get everybody out the river. So eventually, at some point, somebody needs to walk up the river, walk upstream and say, what's causing people to fall into the river in the first place? How can we stop so many people from falling in the river so we can stop that from happening? And so that's when I think about policy change, that's what it is to me when I think about it. So one example is that, let's say your child, Bree brought up school boards, right? So if your child has trouble reading, you got a young child, they're having trouble reading. So you can help them by reading at home. You can meet their immediate needs by helping them at home. You can advocate to their teacher, maybe the social worker at the school saying, I want my child to get some special interventions at school, right? You should do that. Of course, advocate for your child, individual advocacy, say, help my child, they need some extra support. But if you talk to other at the bus stop, when you're waiting for your kid to get home from school, you're waiting there with other parents, and you learn, okay, my kid isn't the only one who's struggling to read. There's 8 or 9 or 10 children in his class who have trouble reading. So you could still advocate to the teacher about that, but the reality is that teacher may not have a paraprofessional in the class. There might only be one reading specialist in the entire school. So you could band together with those other parents and say, let's go to the school board and say, we need more funding to hire more paraprofessionals to help all the kids learn how to read. We need to have a pre-K class in this school district so that kids get introduced to school earlier. We need more funding, the county level for Head Start, for example. So that's the difference between kind of individual advocacy and going upstream to change it systemically. So next slide, please. Where I work at the Georgia Justice Project, we sometimes talk about big P policy change and small P policy change. So when we talk about big P policy change, we're talking about legislative change, something that needs a government body to vote and change the code or the law. So for example, if we are wanting to, let's say parole, right? Nikki mentioned parole earlier. There's lots of things wrong with the parole system. So if somebody wants to change the way people with life sentences get their, when they're eligible for parole consideration. Women on the Rise is working on this. So it used to be that somebody was sentenced to a life sentence, they could get their parole reviewed or be considered for parole in 7 years. Then eventually the legislature changed it to 14 years before they could even be considered. And now it's 30 years before you can even be considered. If we want to change that, when parole consideration happens, that is a big P policy change. We have to introduce a bill to the Georgia legislature and they will review that. But if we're talking about some other processes within the parole system, like can you bring witnesses to a parole hearing? Do you have it in person? That may not need a legislative change in the Georgia legislature. That might just be getting the State Board of Parole change their administrative practices. So that would be small P policy change. Another example is probation. So Georgia Justice Project passed a law, Senate Bill 105, that allows people to terminate their probation after 3 years if and they meet some other criteria. So that required a law change, big P policy change. But we're also doing some small P policy stuff on the implementation side. The law still need to educate judges, local parole, local probation officers, local offices about how they should be considering people for that thing. So that's the small P policy change that I talked about. So before we switch to the next slide, which is a video, I just want to say 2 things, which is if you work for a 501c3, a nonprofit, you are able to lobby and influence policy. So the only thing you are not allowed to do as a 501c3 is to advocate for candidates or a particular political party. But you can do all the advocating you want about a bill or an issue. So just don't fear, don't let anybody tell you as a nonprofit you can't advocate and you can't lobby. So you can. So we're going to now show a video. So think back to your elementary days when you watched The Schoolhouse Rocks, I'm Just a Bill, I'm Only a Bill, and it walked you through the process of how a bill becomes a law. So as I said, we're going to talk mostly about the Georgia legislature. So this one is not Schoolhouse Rocks, but it's similar, but it's very Georgia specific. So this is an example of somebody has an idea, like it talked about parole or something, or changing your school board policies. That is an idea that someone has. They bring it to the Georgia legislature. They find a legislator who will say, yes, I understand. I believe that's a problem too. And let's change that. And then this is what happens to a bill, an idea that becomes written down and to change the law in a bill. And then hopefully, if your legislative champion has the power, that's the tricky part, is finding somebody who believes in that, but also then has the power to make that happen, has access to certain committees or things like that. This is what will happen with that. So we're going to watch a video next, and then after that, Blake, I think, will talk more about the Georgia legislature.
On the second Monday of every year, the Georgia General Assembly convenes for a 40-day session. The General Assembly is our state's legislative body. Located in the capital of Atlanta, it's where state laws are written, debated, and amended. The legislature consists of two chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Much of the work in the General Assembly concerns bills. A bill is a draft of a proposed law. It's presented to a legislative body for approval. There are two types of bills, general and local. A general bill applies statewide. A local bill concerns a law at the city or county level. All bills are written to amend the official code of Georgia, annotated. This is a compilation of laws for Georgia. In order for a bill to become a law, it has to pass through many stages. First, it's filed with a clerk at the House or the Secretary of the Senate. In Georgia, only legislators in the House and Senate can introduce bills. However, any bill to raise or spend money must originate in the House. The presiding officers of each chamber take the next step. In the House, the presiding officer is called the Speaker of the House. The presiding officer of the Senate is the state lieutenant governor. After a bill is introduced, the Speaker or Lieutenant Governor assigns the bill to a standing committee. Standing committees are the heart of the legislative process. A standing committee is a small group of legislators that reviews and considers bills for approval. A standing committee gathers and studies the facts related to the bill. Testimony is heard from experts on the subject. Legislators who favor or oppose the bill are called to speak. Citizens have a chance to comment on the bill as well. Unlike the General Assembly, which meets once a year for 40 days, a standing committee may meet year-round. The committees cover a range of subjects like transportation, education, energy, and agriculture. A standing committee decides the next step for a bill. They have several options. They can report the bill back to the House favorably with or without amendments. They can report out a substitute bill. They can report a bill with a do not pass recommendation. Or they can hold the bill from consideration. Once a bill has come out of committee, it's put on a rules calendar. Prepared by the Rules Committee every evening during the legislative session, the rules calendar determines what bills will be introduced and when. Presiding officers now present the bill to the chamber. The bills are called up one by one and debate takes place. Legislative members may come forward to speak at the well, a podium at the front of the chamber, or legislators may ask questions from their desk. After debate, the vote is held. Legislators vote yea or nay through an electronic voting system. A majority of votes is required for passage of the bill. In the smaller 56-member Senate, that's 29 votes. The larger 180-member House requires 91 votes for a bill to pass. Identical bills must pass the House of Representatives and the Senate to become law. A passed bill is sent from one house to another. If the second house amends the bill, it is sent back to the house where it originated. That house can accept or refuse the bill. If the bill is refused, it's sent back to the other chamber, and the house that added amendments can remove them or stand firm. If the two houses cannot agree on the particulars of the bill, it moves to the conference committee, which consists of 3 members of each house. The conference committee tries to forge a compromise acceptable to both houses, and then writes a report that is presented to the Senate and House of Representatives. The last stage of the legislative process involves the executive branch of state government, the governor's office. In general, the governor receives most bills at the end of the legislative session, at which time the governor has 40 days to act on the bill. The governor has 3 options: sign the bill into law, veto the bill, or do nothing. If the bill is vetoed, it is sent back to the House where it was introduced. The bill may or may not then overcome a veto. 2/3 of both houses must vote for the bill to override the veto. If the governor does nothing with the bill, it becomes law after the 40-day period has expired.
Okay, really what I want to do very quickly is to make what you just saw a little bit less abstract, and I'm just going to walk through a bill that passed last year, House Bill 123, which reformed a law to better protect people with intellectual disability from being sentenced to death. It's unconstitutional to execute someone with intellectual disability. Georgia's law did not do a good job of actually enforcing that mandate from the United States Constitution. So a good bill passed, and I'm going to walk through how that happened through that procedure that we just learned about. But first, this is an aerial view of the state capitol. You'll see the public entrance, which is where we enter. It's right there in that street between the Capitol and the Legislative Office Building. The Legislative Office Building is where some committees are, where some lawmakers' offices are. But some committees meet in the Capitol Building, and some lawmakers' offices are in the Capitol Building as well. I also just have highlighted Central Presbyterian Church at the top of your screen, right across the street from the House. And that is where Justice Day is. And Nikki talked about that some, but we'll talk about that later on tonight as well. Okay, so House Bill 123, because it's a House bill, that means that it's starting in the House. So in the House, we see that it was introduced, read a couple of times, but as we learned, the next step is for it to be referred to a standing committee.
This afternoon, we are going to do just a hearing only on 2 bills, and we're going to start with House Bill 123, presented by Representative Werkheiser.
I shared that because you saw that was the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee. That is the standing committee that it was sent to. If you follow if you follow legislation that touches on criminal legal reform, the major standing committees that you're going to see is in the House, Judiciary Non-Civil or Judiciary Juvenile, or Public Safety and Homeland Security. The Senate standing committees that we see a lot is Senate Judiciary and Senate Public Safety. But this bill was sent to Judiciary Non-Civil. You'll notice that first one was hearing only, which means they did not act on the bill. This next video will actually be when they vote to report it out to the full House. And the arrow is pointing to, on the first floor, that is where Judiciary Non-Civil is located. So this is one of the ones that is in the Capitol building itself.
I would ask that we fix this and let's send it on to the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all we have. Majority Leader F. Straight.
Motion do pass.
Motion a second do pass on LC 48-1378. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of passage of the bill say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Congratulations, you're on the rules.
So just a couple of notes on that. One thing that your first time hearing this maybe, he mentioned LC and then a bunch of numbers. And it's a little confusing because they were talking about House Bill 123. But LC, that's the number that identifies which version of the bill that is. So language in a bill can be tweaked along the way. Like we've heard about amendments and substitutes. When he said that LC number, that was just identifying the version of the bill that they were moving forward. And you also heard that if they were on to rules, as you saw in the video, it's the rules committee which is responsible for putting it on the calendar for the full House to vote on. And that is what they did. So on March the 4th, it passed the House unanimously. And what you might remember is if it passes its chamber of origin, it is transmitted to the other chamber.
On the passage of House Bill 123, the yeas are 172, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Congratulations.
So it is sent over to the Senate where it's read and referred, which means they are sending it to a standing committee in the Senate, which happens to be the Senate Judiciary Committee is where they send it. And here's a video of the first time they took that up. And as you'll see, the Senate Judiciary Committee is located in the legislative office buildings across the street.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, well, I'll be the bad guy. I'm hoping I'm still carrying the bill in the Senate. I'm committed to you to get this bill done, but let's make sure we get it right. So what we'll do is put this back on for next Wednesday. In the meantime, let's get the scrivener error fixed, which
And here is when it does pass, but what you'll notice is the committee favorably reports the bill by substitute. So that was mentioned in the video that we watched, but we'll talk about it right after this.
All right, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. It is unanimous. Back the underlying motion to pass by committee substitute now as amended. All those in favor, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Congratulations, and thank you again for all your work, all the advocates, all the work y'all have done on this bill. We are almost there now. Am I still allowed to carry it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be carrying it in the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
All right, so the first video when the chairman of the committee said, I'll be the bad guy, and said we were going to hold off so that they could fix some things, that's really what a substitute is. So a substitute means that there's work being done on the language that isn't like requiring votes or anything like that. So like those changes were made through working with lawmakers behind the scenes over the course of a week. But then you heard as amended. An amendment is they're motioning to amend the substitute to make a change to it. If I recall correctly, this amendment was one of the members of the committee thought that the bill should go into effect immediately upon signature instead of waiting until July 1st. So you motioned to amend it. They voted, and the committee voted in favor of amending the substitute. So they did that, and then they will send it to the full Senate if rules puts it on the calendar. So we'll move on. And then here you see it did pass the Senate. One thing that I hope you remember from the video is if the bill had not been changed at all, it would be going straight to the governor. But identical versions of the bill have to pass. So since the House passed a version that was then changed and tweaked a little bit in the Senate, they have to send it back to the House. And here you'll see the House voted to agree to the version that the Senate passed, which means that it goes to the governor. That's pretty much everything. I'm looking for questions and answers because I know that this is a lot of information and it can be very dense. A quick thing is like nobody needs to be an expert on this stuff. You do not need to be a parliamentarian to be able to be a good advocate. But it is just helpful to know some of this stuff, and we would like to empower each other with information. A couple of quick things here, just that really wasn't covered. Georgia does a biennial session. So like right now, we are in the 2025-2026 biennial. So we're in the second year of that. That means bills that were introduced and didn't become law last year, they're still pending. And like there can be a push for them this year. Those that made it part of the way, but not all the way last year, get to pick up almost where they left off. But at the end of this session, it's blank slate until the 2027 to 2028 session. You heard in the first video when these start the second Monday of January, so that was yesterday this year. Really the big day, the only deadlines that you really need to know are crossover day and sine die. Crossover day is the deadline for a House bill to pass the House so that it can move over to the Senate, or a Senate bill to pass the Senate so it can move over to the House. This year, crossover day is March 6th. And sine die is just an annoying way to say the last day of session, which this year is April 2nd. And yeah, I could go into lots of different caveats of stuff, but I don't think that that's helpful. And I'd rather just like address targeted questions that maybe anybody has. So I'm about to I'll be monitoring the chat and everything, but now I'm gonna pass it to Robin, who will maybe wake you up if some of this puts you to sleep.
Thank you, Blake. And actually, that was really informative. Like I learned something. So so thank you very much. As Blake said, my name is Robin Hassan Simpson. I'm the executive director with Women on the Rise, and we are an organization that are women that are impacted by the legal system. So I'm to talk about opportunities for advocacy. So advocate is simply using your voice, experience, and power individually and collectively. So to influence decisions that affect your life and your community. So opportunities for advocacy show up everywhere. So such as like making phone calls, decisions makers and their staff, they track how many constituents that reach out and what actually we care about. You can send emails. Sending emails is an effective advocacy tool because they create a written record of your concern. And signing petitions. Signing petitions are simple, but it's a powerful advocacy tool. And it shows decision makers how many people actually share a common demand. So on advocacy days, what makes that very important is basically it gives you the opportunity to speak to your lawmaker. So when you speak into your lawmaker face to face, and it's one of the most powerful advocacy tools because it humanizes the issues, and it helps build personal relationships that can influence how they think and basically how they vote. And also learning from panels and networking with other advocates helps you build knowledge, confidence, and relationships so you can stay informed on issues that are important to you. And sharing your story. So sharing your story through advocacy helps decision makers understand the real life impacts on laws and policies. And it turns issues into human experiences that can actually inspire empathy. And then it also helps you here. Sorry. So here you can actually see the website to find contact information online and then engage with your lawmaker on social media. I always say that you need to actually look people up. Like Bree actually said it earlier. Become friends with them, get on social media, see what they're talking about, and then seeing how you can connect that back to what's important to you. And also, you'll see the QR code so you can actually find your direct legislator. So, next slide. Okay, so talking to lawmakers, we have some do's or don'ts. So, a few common myths about speaking with your lawmaker. It's not a waste of time. Brief conversations can influence how they vote, how they think, and how they prioritize issues. And you can change legislators' minds because many of them have limited direct experience with the issues that they vote on. And so they need to hear from you. And so hearing from you and your stories and solutions actually helps them shift what they're already thinking. So also think about when you're talking to them, it can be scary, especially for impacted people. But I'm reminded all the time that they are people too, and actually they just need to be informed about what matters to us. So next slide. Okay, so here's the thing what we talk about a lot with our members. So we tell them when you're talking to your lawmakers, try not to cover too much. So make it short and to the point. So as many people are trying to get their attention, and so you want to be able to get your point across. Don't avoid talking to lawmakers you think they may not agree with you. So lasting social justice change work requires changing hearts and minds. So you have to think about they don't understand a lot of the things that especially impact the people, what we experience. So you have to show them why that's important. Be sure not to make promises, threats, or anything of that nature to them. So you have to be respectful and with your communication so they can understand your the issue that you're trying to make. Don't be offended if a lawmaker doesn't respond to you, as their schedules are often tight. And they may still hear you and they may hear your message, even if they can't stop to engage in a full conversation. So be prepared with a short message of your cause and make it personable. Be open and prepare for questions, especially the hard ones. Have a response. One of the toughest things that you can do is not have an answer when they ask you the hard questions. I know that when we go into the Capitol and we talk about parole issues, they want to ask you those difficult questions. Make sure you have a response. Always offer them something back to the questions that they may have. And also offer resources to them as well. So you can offer them resources if it's from data that you've collected, if it's stories that you've heard, and then get their card. Something that I learned to make us memorable is that we ask for a selfie. And so when we see someone and we walk up to them like, hey, can we take a selfie, introduce yourself to them, ask them for their card. And then when you're emailing them, asking them for a meeting, we attach that selfie to the email and then they remember you. So it's something that they can like, oh, I remember that, person speaking with them because we took this selfie, and then they're able to say, okay, let's set up this meeting and let's talk. So we can actually have a one-on-one conversation with them in their office. And so you can actually get some time along with them. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here we are showing you these photos to give you an idea what you can see when you're entering the Capitol. It can be overwhelming with so much going on, but your voice is needed in this building. And I say all the time, when I first went, we had a lot of things going on. It was very overwhelming. But when you get to actually talking to people and you realizing that, okay, I need to educate them about what's important to me, all of that just disappears. I promise you it does. So this picture shows the main areas of the Capitol, which the Capitol has 3 levels where people can stand, meet, and they can talk with their lawmakers in the hallway. Also, we call it going to the ropes, where in the hallway you can actually speak with them as they move in between meetings. And during Justice Day, you register to sign up for Justice Day. We will be able to walk into groups across the street to the Capitol and do just that. And you can always find someone when we go on Justice Day, find someone that has been there before and understand and just watch them. And know who your legislator is ahead of time so you know how to find them so you can talk to them about your issues. But just watch a few people who have done it once before and you'll be able to go right into the flow. And the next slide. Okay.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was super informative, and everything you said is right on. It's super intimidating to be there sometimes, and we know that historically terrible decisions about people's lives have been made there, but I think we all maintain the hope that good decisions can be made there too and are. So appreciate you and Women on the Rise for your work in this space. I'm so thankful to be here, honored to be here with all of my comrades today. My name is Lucy Harrell, and I am the founding director of Atlanta Community Support Project, or ACSP. ACSP is a directly impacted group of people organizing and resourcing each other with the tools we need to do this advocacy, to engage legally and civically while we're in prison and after. So I'm here today. Don't want to get too into the weeds, but I do want to talk about language equity because it is very important, especially in the context of speaking with lawmakers and advocating for issues, right? I always say that language equity is free policy work that we can all do. It doesn't cost us anything to assert our personhood. And so what we mean by that is that as people who've been criminalized, we don't give in to the negative, dehumanizing labels that have been ascribed to us, right? You see here on this slide on the left, a lot of words that are codified into Georgia law, and people, lawyers specifically, think that if these words are in the law, those are the words they're supposed to use. But I constantly have to remind people that, we change our code all the time, and just because it's in the law now doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be changed. We can look back through our history and see that. So we want to call people people. We want to call all people people, no matter what they've been through, what the criminal legal system has to say about us. We are all people. We always at ACSP include this photo on the right, which is a sign of a Georgia law. I actually took this picture when I was at Metro Transitional Center. I worked on a maintenance crew, and one day, somebody in charge at the transitional center came and said, well, you could put this sign up. And I didn't end up putting the sign up personally, but I felt such surrealism, just that they wanted me to put this sign up that really shows in black and white that our state law still says person or inmate, implying that an inmate is not a person. So it's not that this stuff is abstract, right? This stuff is very concrete. It's very intentional. Race-based oppression is very intentional in Georgia and other southern states especially, and it is perpetuated through our law. So we see it as our duty as directly impacted advocates to make sure that we're trying to change those words in our code as we go. And especially when we're talking to lawmakers about certain bills, even if those words are in there in the law already, we still want to assert our personhood. You can go to the next slide, Blake. So I don't ever want to police someone's language. I don't want to tell people what to call people, right? I mean, I think the thing is just like understanding why those words were created in the law to intentionally oppress us, to intentionally harm people, to intentionally treat some of us as others and othering groups. So we need to just recognize that harm collectively and try to remember that everybody is a person. But for people who want to try saying things differently, we've put some examples in here. We always go through these trainings when we do legal trainings with our lawyer partners, and we always try to just make sure that everybody's on the same page about language, because we're advocating for ourselves, we're advocating for our lives, and we have to start at some basic level, right? We always say, what are we even talking about if we can't convince you first that we're people? What are we even doing here? So I think that's a baseline equitability that we try to start with. As you can see, you can read the alternate, suggestions for not using some of these bad phrases. I want to specifically talk about one of them, though. We have a code in Georgia called Georgia's First Offender Act, and we would never call ourselves the O word, but sometimes we have to reference that law. We have to reference that law in legal briefs. We have to reference that law when we're changing that law. And so it's always good to acknowledge that we are people who might have been sentenced under Georgia's First Offender Act. We say FOA for short. So we're people who were sentenced under FOA. Like, we don't become that. We don't become that thing just any more than we become the felony. We don't call ourselves felons because we don't become the felony. So we want to make those distinctions as we talk to lawmakers. And you don't have to argue with them. You don't have to go into that in your 2-minute spills, but just simply continuing to refer to the groups of people that are affected by the bills you're advocating for as people, I think is good advocacy in itself. And I think we can move now to the exercise.
I'll stop sharing my screen and let y'all come off video and take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shaniqua Levin, and I am the CEO and founder of the Women's Diversity Network. And I'm excited to be here with you all today to role model what a visit looks like when you go and meet with a lawmaker and you're going to advocate for a bill. Lucy, you want to tell them a little bit about the bill, and then we'll go into our exercise.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shaniqua. So we're going to be role playing someone advocating for House Bill 673. This is a bill that would give a second chance for Georgia's children who are being sentenced for felonies. It would give them a chance to be sentenced under Georgia's First Offender Act, or FOA. As FOA stands now, there are certain limitations to people being sentenced under the act. For example, people who have, quote, serious violent felonies, people who have sex-related offenses, trafficking, DUIs. There's a whole list in our code of people who are excluded from being sentenced under FOA. And FOA is great because under the law, it means that you haven't been convicted. That is something that after your sentence is over, all of your rights are restored. You don't have to carry the same stigmatizing label as a lot of other people, as most people in Georgia. So HB 673, what it's going to do is allow people who are 17 or under at the time they were convicted, no matter what the offense is, they have the opportunity to be sentenced under FOA either at the time of sentencing or retroactively.
All right, let's get started. I'm serving as the lawmaker. So who do we have here with us today?
Hi, Representative Levin. My name is Lucy Harrell. I'm with Atlanta Community Support Project, and I really wanted to talk to you to see how you were going to vote on House Bill 673, the second chance for children to be sentenced under Georgia's First Offender Act. Do you know about the bill?
Oh, I've heard of that bill. I've heard of that bill. But just tell me a bit more, refresh my memory again.
Sure, Representative Levin. As it currently stands, only people with certain convictions can receive First Offender Act sentencing in Georgia, which opens a lot of doors for people after the sentence is over. It helps with getting jobs. It helps with getting housing. It gives people a real second chance. And we simply want to make sure that all children in Georgia who end up being convicted of felonies have that opportunity.
This is like a no-brainer to me. It seems like something that we should probably be supportive of. Is there something that in this bill that you feel like people are really against?
I think that people are scared of letting everybody have access to the First Offender Act treatment. Is something that hasn't historically been done in Georgia. But it really would show that we are committed to second chances for children by passing this bill.
Has this been done anywhere else?
I believe so, Representative Levin. We have some good data on other states that have similar bills. I would be really glad to email this to you or someone in your office so you could take a look at it. I don't want to waste your time right now, but I would be glad to follow up with that information.
I definitely would appreciate that. That'll give me some more background on it. So that way I can hopefully vote favorable for it.
So can we get a yes from you when this comes to your committee?
Sure. Let me just take a look at the data. As long as the data is where we need it to be, then I will be able to give you a yes on that. But I just am going to need to look at the data that you send me.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
You're welcome, and thank you for all the advocating you're doing. Okay, so that was a positive reaction of someone who's probably going to be supportive of the bill. And usually, when they're supportive of the bill, they kind of will ask a few more questions or say they know about it. And a lot of times, too, you will meet with their legislative aide more so than you meet with that person. And the aide will, tell you that they probably need to bring it back to the representative. They'll tell you that they'll, and then when they say that, you want to like get a date to follow back up with them because they will then it'll go out into the world and you won't hear anything back from them sometimes. So you might want to hold them accountable to say, great, um, if you're going to speak with your representative, can I follow back up with you next Thursday? If you're meeting with your representative, you might want to say, and they say, send me some more information. You say, okay, I'm going to send you that tomorrow. Can I follow back up with you Monday to see if we can count on you as a yes, or if you have any more questions? It's kind of good to hold them accountable and follow through, so that way you can stay on their toes and make sure that they're going to support it. Now we're going to role model someone who's not in favor of the bill. Okay, I'm going to start again. And who do we have here?
Hi, Representative Levin. My name is Lucy Harrell. I live in your district, and I just wanted to talk to you about House Bill 673, which is a chance for children to be sentenced under Georgia's First Offender Act, to see how you feel about it and how you're going to vote on it.
Oh, that's a bill that lets everybody just do whatever they want, isn't it?
It isn't actually. These are specifically for people who were tried and convicted as adults who were under 17 at the time. And it would actually give them a real fair chance at a life when they got out of prison, which is something that they don't have right now in our statute.
Well, how do we know that they're not going to do something else when they come out? I'm not convinced that we need to give them this chance. They have done something wrong.
Well, Representative, the statistics show that people who don't have to live under the thumb of having a record and being labeled have almost a 0% chance of being recriminalized. They have better opportunities for jobs, for housing, everything, because they don't have that shadow following them. So actually doing this is a matter of putting public safety first, about putting Georgia's children first.
Well, they shouldn't have done the crime. You do a crime, you got to pay the punishment. So we're going to keep it on your record, and maybe people won't do these crimes.
Well, actually, Representative, if we criminalize people under the age of 17, what we're doing is perpetuating crime in Georgia. So that is something that, as community advocates, we really care about public safety. We want to make sure that people have the resources that they need, so that we don't have the type of crime that we've been having, and that requires us to make some changes. So we're really trying to convince you all to get on board. Look, I saw last session you voted for 2 bills that were really pro Georgia children, and this bill is completely in line with that. It has accountability built into it. And we're just asking you to continue supporting the type of legislation that you've been supporting.
I definitely support children, and I definitely feel like we have to invest in children. But I don't think that we should just let criminals not have their record out there. Employers need to know what they've done. People need to know if they're safe around them. I don't think that we should just wipe them clean.
Well, these children probably wouldn't be labeled as criminals if they had gotten what they needed in the first place. All we're asking you all to do as representatives is to give them that second chance after they have served their time.
I'm not really convinced. I've heard what you had to say, but I'm just not really convinced that it's the right thing to do for our general public safety.
I understand, Representative. I really think that you should reconsider, but this is an issue that we will continue to press upon. And as the years go by, even as the months go by, the data is increasingly showing that voting yes on this bill and bills like these is something that increases public safety, gives people a second chance, creates opportunities for fair chances, especially for children. The law is on our side. The law is on our side. The Supreme Court, the Georgia courts have said that they think that children deserve second chances, particularly, and shouldn't just be written off as irredeemable. So we're standing in line with the data, the social science, and common sense, and what we see in our community.
I hear what you're saying, but when you talk about the safety and protecting everybody, I want to make sure that my community members feel safe, that my constituents feel safe. And I don't think that they're going to feel safe if we just give everyone another chance, another clean state. They have a chance. They can go make a good life for themselves. They're out once they're out. So I think that's more than enough.
All right, Representative, would you be willing to have a meeting where we actually had some folks in our community who would benefit from this bill come and speak to you? Would you be willing to hear people who it directly affects, some of the families that it directly affects?
Well, definitely give us a call, and if we have the availability, then and we have the time, then we'll see what we can do.
All right, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You too. Lucy, you want to give some feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes this happens, right? People just don't have the same views of public safety as we know exist, and so we have to run up against that a lot. But I think you did a good job, Shaniqua. Like, this is real, right? This is sometimes what we deal with, and people have to be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I just dealt with this just yesterday, where he just did not care. Well, all the things that we were saying, he was just not convinced. So sometimes you have to recognize that be on your side. You focus on the ones that are either an ally or someone where you can, if they had more information, they would be more along the side, that movable middle. That sometimes you want to, if you're at this point, you might want to put more of your energy there than trying to focus so much on someone that's a hardcore no. But the example you said of bringing people there to hear from them will be good. Someone like what I tried to represent will probably be where you need to bring more community members in, more people and to show them. And then they still might be like, no. And then you focus on those that you can move. Hopefully this has been helpful.
It was very helpful. Thank y'all so much. That was fantastic. I'm gonna pull back up the shared screen, and I forget in our run of show who was gonna handle it next. But thank you both so much.
That would be me, Blake. Hey.
Thank you.
It's okay. We are here. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for sticking in with us until the end. And this is the part where we call you to do something. It makes no sense if we all get together to look at each other's faces, but don't call each other to action. So we will be having Justice Day, where we will actually get together, have some panels, talk about some of the bills that are up on the block, the chopping block this year, some of the bills that we hope to get through, some of the problematic bills. And then we will be going over to the Capitol to speak to our legislators. And that's going to take place on February 24th. The registration link is at the bottom. It's justicereformpartnership.org/Justice Day. And we really invite you all to come and be with us. Honestly, you learn more by repetition. I promise you, it might seem foreign right now, but as you hear it over and over and over again, it will become second nature. I promise. I did not get any formal training outside of the training that I got. It's like on the job training. So come be on the job of freedom, the job of changing these laws so that it can impact the good of our community. And I also encourage you to connect with all these orgs that were on this call tonight. They took their time out to share their expertise, their lived experiences, and most importantly, their love for community. So connect with Southern Center for Human Rights, Georgia Justice Project, Women on the Rise, Bard Business, Atlanta Community Support Projects. Each of the organizations are doing amazing work, and collectively, the Justice Reform Partnership is bringing all our organizations together. So please make sure that if you have a question, I think you can go to the next slide. And we didn't have a chance to answer it after this question and answer session that I'm going to give to you right now. This is our information on the screen. I'm going to leave it up here while I look for Q&A. I do not see any questions in the Q&A, but if you have a question, please feel free to just drop it in the chat right now. I'm looking, I'm scrolling. Just see some really great comments. And you all did great with the comments, with the amens and the way to go, because when people are up in front of people, whether it's on Zoom or not, it really feels encouraging for people to not just resonate with the message, but just so that we know that people are there and we're just not talking our heads off. Okay, let's see. Any questions? Okay, I do not see any questions in our Q&A box. I do not see any questions in the chat. Okay. Thanks, Walisha. Thank you to everyone that contributed in the chat, that contributed tonight. Again, here is the contact information for everyone that spoke today. Please feel free to reach out to everyone. They slip Rosalind on here. She did not speak today, but will be happy to speak to you. So thank you all for joining us. And remember, on the 24th, please join us for Justice Day. It is nothing like being able to know that the people that work for us, which are the people underneath that gold dome, that they are not scary. We are actually their bosses. So come and join us. And I promise you, you will continue to hear this information and it will not be as intimidating. So thank you all. We look forward to seeing you on the 24th. The link was dropped in the chat to register with us. I am going to copy it and drop it again in the chat. And yeah, thank you. I won't belabor it if you all have no questions. Thank you for joining us, and you have an amazing night.
Thanks, Bree. Like we said, the session has started, so get rest when you can. And on that note, good night, everyone. Take care of yourselves, and hopefully I will see you at Justice Day, if not before then.